This right here is the podcast that I wish I had 8 years ago when I began the process of designing my life, when I took responsibility for being the creator of my life. It would have helped me avoid a lot of pain, confusion, and anxiety. But let me be clear, I have no regret because ultimately, all of these experiences and moments that I have encountered along the path over the last 8 years have helped shape me into who I am today, and what a blessing that is, because now I get to help all of you. These are the 8 emotional traps that I once fell for along the path of becoming the designer of my life. Number 1, stress. Who likes stress? Nobody does, right? What's the opposite of stress? It's calmness. We can think to times in our life when we felt the most calm, how beautiful that feeling and emotion is. What if we could access that every single day, every moment of our day? How great would we feel? Stress can come from trying to juggle too many things at once. This really hits on getting very clear on those very few things that matter and saying no to everything else. Being a people pleaser, you're constantly saying yes to every invite or ask for help, and you're just doing things because you feel you need to do it to keep other people happy when you're costing your own well-being. Neglecting our mental, physical, and spiritual well-being, right? We cause stress in our lives by not prioritizing and filling up our cup, our self-care cup, and that is having a ripple effect onto us. The ways in which I avoid stress is not thinking I need to do everything myself and delegating tasks to others. I used to stretch myself so damn thin because I felt like the more I worked, the more I could get done, which black and white is true. But the problem was there was so much to be done that it was ultimately impossible for any human to balance all of these things. So through the process of learning how to delegate, it helped me identify the few things I loved to do and was great at, and then outsourced everything else. And that has eliminated so much stress in my life. Not attaching my identity to the results of my business. When you are putting all of your chips on the result of your business and things don't go according to plan, you're stressed out because you're attaching your identity to the result of your business. What has been really helpful for me to de-escalate stress is more focusing on process rather than results. So I get obsessed with, can I show up and do the daily things that I know are important to me? If yes, great. We're doing all the right things, regardless of what the results might show. That has been a huge hack. Carving out time for self-care habits daily. That has immensely decreased my stress because I'm finding time to meditate. I'm getting in my workout. I'm eating healthy meals. I'm taking time to go for a midday walk. I'm taking time to prioritize my own needs in the evening, right? So carving out time for self-care daily has absolutely helped me decrease from stress. Also being clear on the few tasks that I need to focus on in the day ahead of me. It's overwhelming to think about all of the things that I possibly could be working on at this moment while I'm recording this podcast, right? I'm currently building out the Life Designer Club course and community, and there's a million things that need to get done between now and launch date. If I was to put my mind and think on those tasks right now, I wouldn't be present for this podcast. And so I always do my best to make a daily to-do list and just focus on those few tasks in the day ahead. And that has helped me tremendously. So the result of me removing the stress from my life, or doing my best to my ability to remove it, I move through the day frictionless. I just feel like I'm constantly just flowing, dancing, and going from one thing to the next, and just in this state of calmness because I've set up my life. I built systems in my life. I built boundaries in my life to encourage me to just flow and not deal with some of the major stressors that I used to deal with. Another thing is when challenges arise, I pivot accordingly. Once again, I've been working on that, but I don't see challenges as these big deals that I used to feel like they were before. I just see them as it is part of life. There's nothing you can do to avoid them. So I just take them as they come. And that's helped me just treat them so much differently. When I overcommit myself, I back out of plans. That is something I don't pride myself on doing. And I really try to be extremely intentional with what I say yes to. And if I say yes, I'm absolutely there. But things happen. Life throws you curveballs. And in the moments when I just realize oh, wow, I actually need to back out of this call. I need to back out of this dinner. I need to back out of this Sunday commitment because I just need to reprioritize something else in my life. I do it. And that has helped me decrease stress tremendously. Number two is anxiety. Let's think about what the opposite of anxiety is. It's inner peace. When we're anxious, we have all these thoughts running in our mind constantly. The opposite of that would be living in a place of just inner peace, back to kind of similarly to calmness. Anxiety can come from thinking about all the steps that need to get completed to reach a goal, and you start getting overwhelmed thinking about the hundreds of things you need to do to get you from point A to point B. That can just be like a hamster wheel if you're just running in circles, thinking about the same things, and it just can drive you crazy. Next thing would be being overwhelmed with when to do what in our day. Similar to kind of what I was saying earlier about creating a daily to-do list, there's also something to be said about being intentional with what you do and when during your day. So mapping out when you work out, when you're going to have lunch, when you're going to have dinner, when you're going to start and stop work. All of those decisions that you're making ahead of time is removing decision fatigue, which is you waking up and going, do I want to work out or do I want to work out tonight? Am I hungry right now or should I wait an hour to eat? Do I want to answer emails or should I work on this project? So much energy is being lost. So much overwhelm is being built up because you're being forced to make these decisions. When you know what you're supposed to be doing when throughout your day, it just allows you to just flow. Recognizing something is off in a certain area of your life and not knowing how to fix it, that can cause a lot of anxiety because you're like, hey, this needs to be fixed, but I don't know what to do. That's where anxiety can start to build up within. So ways in which I avoid anxiety would be kind of similar to what I was just saying, having a custom calendar that is aligned with my personal and professional priorities so that everything is in alignment. If I look at the time of recording this, it's a Wednesday. If I look at my schedule for the rest of the week, I know that both my personal and professional priorities are mapped out in advance. Both are being equally valued and nothing is being neglected. And that helps me feel inner peace because I know the areas most important in my life are being accounted. Reminding myself that all I need to focus on is what I have in front of me right now, right? All I'm thinking about is recording this best podcast that I could possibly record. And then after this, I'll move on to the next task. If while recording this podcast, I start thinking about the TikTok video I want to make after this podcast, then what happens is once I get to the TikTok video that I'm going to make, I'm then spending my time during that present moment thinking about the email newsletter that I need to write up. Constantly living in a place of thinking about what's next instead of thinking about what is. And that will completely disrupt the anxiety and help remove it completely. Having a hard conversation now rather than pushing it off till later. I saw Chris Williamson, the host of Modern Wisdom podcast, a few months ago here in Austin. And one thing that he said that really resonated with me was close the loop. And I find myself closing the loop a lot faster ever since that conversation. A great example was yesterday. I needed to book my haircut for next week. So I wrote it down to book my haircut. And I knew this would take me all of 2 minutes to do. So instead of me looking at this to-do list item for the rest of the day, knowing I need to get it done, I spent 2 minutes booking it, crossing it off, and then not having to worry about it. So I'm using the example of having a tough conversation. If you keep pushing off the tough conversation, all you're thinking about is I got to have this conversation. I got to have this conversation. That's the loop in your mind is going over and over until you close the loop, which is having a hard conversation. So that can be really, really beneficial is find ways in which you can close the loop. The result of us removing the anxiety is I'm able to be more present in my life because I'm just focusing on being right here, right now, no matter what it is. If I'm talking to somebody, if I'm recording a podcast, if I'm writing something, I'm just focused on the present moment. I'm not overwhelmed when attacking a complex problem. So I mentioned I'm in the process of building out the Life Designer Club course and community. That is a major undertaking of a project. And instead of me getting overwhelmed about all the next steps that I need to kind of challenge myself to figure out, to build it out, to get it live, I'm just asking myself, what's the 1 to 3 things that I need to do today? And then I get clear on it. I do it. The next day I wake up, I ask myself the same question and I do it all over again. And lastly, I just feel more peace in my day-to-day life because I have found ways to remove anxiety And that's been incredibly powerful. Number 3 is fatigue. Think about what the opposite of fatigue is. It's energized. How great would you feel if every day you felt energy? How much differently would that affect almost every aspect of your life? Tremendously, right? Fatigue comes from not getting enough sleep. So, constantly pushing off sleep to get more work done, to stay out later, or, hashtag hustle culture. I only need 6 hours of sleep, so that's all I'm going to get. Fatigue can come from overworking ourselves, just working until sunrise and sunset, and just spending our time on the weekends working, and pushing off anything that is else important to us. And lastly, not treating our bodies with the utmost care. So not carving up the time for the workout, feeding our body unhealthy food, junk foods, could be just not finding times in our day to practice mindfulness or meditation. These are all things that are ultimately going to create fatigue within us. So the ways in which I avoid fatigue sounds so simple, but it makes such a difference, is getting 8 hours of sleep per night. It's a non-negotiable. I learned this through the pandemic, and I was able to prioritize more sleep. And ever since then, I really try to aim to get 8 hours of sleep. And that's coming from someone that used to pride himself with a badge of honor. All I need is 5 to 6 hours of sleep. That was just a rough time in my life. I prioritize my mental, physical, and spiritual health daily. It's non-negotiable. It's the first thing I do every morning, and it truly sets me up for the day. I do believe it creates momentum for the day ahead, so that by the time I sit down and even start working, I am wired. My mind is ripping. I am ready to dive into the work. And lastly, fueling my body with the best foods and nutrients, being very mindful and asking myself, is this food helping me or is it hurting me, right? Living by this philosophy of I am eating to live and I'm not living to eat. Eating to live is I'm feeding myself with foods that are keeping me going, keeping me feeling my best self. Living to eat is like I'm here to just spend my time on earth eating as much as I can and feeding my body whatever I want. It's not a good place to be. So the result of taking charge of our health, of avoiding the fatigue, would be I feel energy from sunrise to sunset. I really can't say this enough. Like I feel woke every moment of every day until probably about 7 p.m. is when I start to really crash, and it just feels incredible. No longer do I feel the midday slumps. I can't tell you the last time I felt that. It probably was when I was still in office working for Liquid IV before the pandemic, because I wasn't prioritizing sleep back then. I don't get that anymore. It just feels incredible. And I also think another big factor of not only the sleep, but making sure that I'm feeding myself the right foods and not overeating, like living by the 80-20 rule, making sure I'm getting enough hydration. I don't experience midday slumps anymore, and it's felt incredible. And also the result, as you can imagine, is my productivity has skyrocketed. I think from start to finish, when the Life Designer Club course and community is done, I think I probably will have done it within 2.5, 3 months. And I truly believe that for most people, it would be a 6-month project. And the only reason I was able to get it done in less time without sacrificing quality is because I have been relentless in prioritizing my time and creating boundaries to help me just focus on building out this thing. Number 4 is guilt. So what's the opposite of guilt? It's freedom. Does anybody actually like feeling guilt or guilty? It's just not fun. It's not a good emotion to handle. But if we were to feel the opposite, it would be freedom. Guilt comes from not taking the time to rest and recharge when we feel we don't deserve it. How many times have you wanted to take that Saturday off, but you're like, I got so much to do, so I got to keep working? Or you pass on a weekend vacation because you look at your to-do list and you feel like, I got more to do, so I don't deserve this break. Guilt comes from prioritizing other needs before ours, right? You feel guilty not helping other people or doing the things that they ask you to do. So you end up doing them and you put your own needs on the back burner. Spending money on ourselves, right? Can feel really guilty, like as if we don't deserve to spend money. Even if it's on things that are prioritizing our own mental well-being, we could feel guilty about doing that. So the ways in which I avoid guilt would be having clarity in my schedule for when it's personal versus professional time. That has created so much freedom within me because I don't feel bad about carving off a whole day on a Saturday to just do whatever I want, or shutting the laptop at 5 p.m. and still seeing emails come in knowing that today was a success. I prioritized what I need to get done, and now it's to switch gears into personal mode. So Having clarity on when is personal and when's professional time in my schedule has been really helpful. Reminding myself it's not selfish to prioritize my needs first. I need to do that because if I don't, who is going to prioritize me? Nobody, right? I show up to the world as the best version of me when I can fill up my cup first. And I always make that the priority. Lastly, asking myself, how will this benefit me, right? Especially if it comes to spending money, if I'm paying for a sauna session, if I am grabbing lunch with a friend, that could be really beneficial because of the conversation that we're going to have. So always asking myself, how could this actually benefit me when it comes to money or really anything else? That helps me not feel as guilty. If I'm asking, how could it benefit me to take a full day off? That could be really good for my mental reset and also allow me to feel recharged and inspired the next day. So the result of this is I have work-life harmony. I feel really in balance on a day-to-day basis. And that feels incredibly just so amazing. I feel at ease daily. I kind of just go through the day, one step, one thing at a time, and feels really good. I don't feel any guilt with what's on my schedule, and I love that. I just love it. I spend money on the things that bring me the most joy unapologetically. I don't feel bad about spending money on things that I've identified as important to me, and I will continue to do that. Number 5 is isolation. What's the opposite of isolation? It's being connected. Does anyone actually like being isolated, feeling alone, right? I think there's studies, and I should have looked this up beforehand, but I think there's studies showing that like humans have never felt alone now more than any other time in the world, which is insane given we have these cell phones and FaceTime, right? So there's something to be said about just isolation becoming a bigger issue. But the opposite of isolation would be you feel connected. So isolation can come from putting all of your time and energy into work. You're just hustle mode. You feel like you aren't allowed or able to carve out time for anything or anyone else. So all you do is work, work, work. You're neglecting friendships and relationships that are important to you, which just makes you feel isolated. It feels like you don't have community. You don't have people checking in with you because you have just continued to neglect them and say no to them so often. Like at some point, if I'm asking a friend, you want to grab lunch next Thursday? No, I can't. 2 weeks later, you want to grab coffee? No, I can't. Hey, you want to grab workout? No, I can't. I'm just going to stop hitting you up. So think about the times you're telling people you can't, you can't. At some point, they're going to give up. Not allowing yourself to explore new interests or experiences, that's making you feel isolated because what happens when we try new experiences or new interests? We're around other people that are also participating. So the ways that I avoid isolation is I attend a weekly run club on Tuesday here in Austin, ran by my buddy Danny Miranda. That helps me meet new people and prioritize his community. I lock in personal calls on my calendar in advance. It is very hard for me to switch gears sometimes to go from work mode to personal mode, or, even at the end of the day, if I am kind of like telling myself, I'm going to call Joe later this evening and it's not locked in on my calendar, when the time comes, it's going to be so much easier for me to be like, you know what, I'm kind of tired. I'll push it to tomorrow. Then that gets pushed and it keeps getting pushed. So locking it on my calendar and telling myself, when this comes around, I need to pick up the phone and call. It helps me hold accountable. I also allow myself to follow my interests, right? I'm taking my first tennis lesson in a couple weeks. It was supposed to be this Friday, but unfortunately we have to push it. And I'm also allowing myself to go to some of these really interesting events that are happening here right now for South by Southwest in Austin. So that's me allowing myself to not feel so isolated. And the result of me doing that, leaning into connection rather than isolation, is I feel seen and heard. I get to talk to people. I get to express what's top of mind in my life. I also get to check in with the most important people to me. That feels really, really good. And because of that, I feel full in this aspect of my life, in relationships and in community. And that's a very important pillar that I've identified into my life. And so I've designed it accordingly. Number 6 is frustration. Who likes to be frustrated? Nobody does, right? So what's the opposite of frustration? It would be fulfilled. How many of you can think of those moments in your life when you feel the most fulfilled and how great that feels? We want to create more fulfillment. We want to design that more into your life. So frustration can come from getting angry at every challenge that you're faced with. It's a place that I've been before. And I'm telling you right now, when you switch the lens and you start to see challenges as inevitable and you welcome them and you see them as adventurous things to work through, it changes everything. Not following through on what you told yourself you were going to do. You told yourself, I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m., but then you get up at 7:30. Now you're disappointing yourself. You told yourself you're going to stop looking at your cell phone in the morning, yet the next day you wake up and you're stuck in bed for 30 minutes, right? Telling ourselves we're going to do one thing, but then doing another, we get frustrated. Also, not communicating directly and honestly with people, beating around the bush, not being very honest and transparent. Then the same thing reoccurs. Now we're building resentment that gets us to be more frustrated. So instead of laying the boundary directly, we kind of beat around the bush when oftentimes we just need to say what we need to say. So the ways in which I avoid frustration is seeing every situation as happening for me instead of happening to me. Trusting that even when faced with challenges, what is this trying to teach me? What is this trying to show me? I might not understand it in this moment, but let me see what happens through it. Great example for me was 2 weeks ago when I realized, wow, I need to hit the reset button on the Life Designer Club course, like copy, because I wrote out the whole thing and then realized it sounds very robotic. I need to I need to create an outline similar to how I run these solo podcasts and kind of just trust myself. And through it, I recognized that needed to happen to me. That needed to happen for me so that this new version of the course could be developed. And just changing that lens will help eliminate some of that frustration. Staying disciplined and consistent with all the things I value and enjoy, right? When I tell myself I want to be in the gym or I want to work out every day at 7 a.m. and following through on it, that helps me feel good. I'm not frustrated with myself because I'm following through on what I said I was going to do. And that is really, really important. And creating realistic timelines. It's so easy to get frustrated by trying to be overachievers and get things done in the shortest period of time, but you have to be realistic. Right? For me, it's like I was even thinking about launching the Life Designer Club in the next 4 weeks. And then I got very realistic about what the next couple weeks looks like for me. And now I'm pushing it out 8 weeks. And that feels so much more in alignment because I know I can cross my T's, dot my I's, make sure everything is good to go. It's not me being lazy. It's not me being a procrastinator. It's me being honest about what is the best date for me to release this without me getting frustrated along the process. And that's been really helpful. So the result is I feel more inner peace on a day-to-day basis because I've eliminated frustration in every aspect of my life when possible. I feel fulfilled, feel really, really fulfilled on a day-to-day basis because all these areas of my life that I've identified as important to me are getting enough proper time, attention, and energy. And I enjoy the small steps every day. I'm seeing everything is happening for me, even the challenges, even the wins, and I'm just trusting it. Number 7, burnt out. How many of you are burnt out or have been burnt out? Nobody enjoys it. I can think of moments in my life when I really hit the wall, and it's been a long time, probably 4 or 5 years since I've had burnout. And I'm so blessed. And I hope through my content, my courses, my podcast, I can help you avoid it at all costs. So what's the opposite of burnout? Rejuvenated. How good does it feel to be rejuvenated, to feel like you're a battery charged at 100% every morning you wake up versus being burnt out and waking up at 60%. Burnout comes from keeping our foot on the gas when the tank is on E, working till 10, 11 p.m. at night when we probably should have stopped at 5 p.m. We're just hurting ourselves by doing that. Neglecting our self-care, telling ourselves we don't have the time to work out. We don't have the time to fill up our cup because we have all these other things we need to tackle in business. It leads us to really feeling burnt out. Not carving out time for important people, hobbies, or life experiences. These are so important. They go hand in hand with our business experiences, right? They're of equal value. The balance needs to be spread evenly or we cave, we burn out. So the ways in which I avoid burnout would be having hard start and stop working times in the days of the week that I'm allowing myself to work. That creates also healthy internal pressure for me to get things done timely. So honestly, without the hard start and stop time, it would take me longer to get more things done because I kind of just feel like I have the whole day to do it. So this creates healthy pressure for me to get more things done. Ultimately, allows me to make more money in less time. Prioritizing my well-being first thing each day, right? That's just making sure I feel mentally, physically, spiritually sound. And I would not be able to show up for this podcast as the version I am right now if I didn't carve out the time to do those things that I know fill me up. Not overcommitting myself to too many social activities, right? You could be really tired after a long day and then you're like, oh, I got to go to this dinner. And then tomorrow you're committing to social events at night. And then the day after that, you have a social event during the middle of the day. Slow down. If that doesn't feel like the season of life that you need to be in right now, then push it all. Do what you need to do. I've been in those seasons where I'm saying yes to everything and it was great, but I've also now currently not in that season. So you got to understand kind of the season of life you're in. The result is I feel energized on a daily basis, truly. From the moment I wake up and put my 2 feet on the ground till pretty much like I'd say around 7 p.m. is when I really start to feel like, whoa, I'm out, done. Tank is on E. I got to relax for the rest of the night. I feel hyper focused and get more done in less time, which has helped my business, helped my productivity, and has been a huge ROI. I see personal time equally as important as professional time. That's a huge shift because I see carving out time for new interests, hobbies, spending time with Kate, doing all the personal things. It is equally as valuable as me seeing dollar signs coming from my business. Because if I go one side or the other too heavily, I'm burnt out and I'm just not in the greatest headspace. And lastly, number 8, regret. Does anyone really enjoy regret? It's like a insect that just keeps sucking the blood out of you and will be stuck in your mind until you remove it. What's the opposite of regret? It's contentment. It's being content with where you are right now, regardless of what has happened in the past, regardless of what's coming in the future. You're content to be right here, right now, as you listen to this episode with me. So regret comes from beating ourselves up for past business decisions, right? Telling yourself like, Bob, you're so stupid. Why did you not do X? Or why did I give this person the trust? Yada, yada, yada. Comes from missing out on important life experiences or moments, right? You tell yourself, I got to work. I can't do this thing. And then that thing happens. Time passes. Now you're regretting that you should have gone. And you just beat yourself up inside because you regret not doing the thing. Also comes from not giving our mind and body what we know it needs. You know you need to work out. You know you need to eat good. You know you need enough hydration. You know you should limit your caffeine, but you do the opposite. And then whether it's at the end of the day or an end of a few weeks or months, you look yourself in the mirror and you're like, damn, why am I not prioritizing myself? I could have been doing this entire time and I didn't, and now I regret it. So the ways in which I avoid regret is I see every failure, quote unquote, as either a winning decision or a learning opportunity. And that is a complete change of frame of like anything that happens for me. I also see it in the lens of even if I failed at something, what did I learn from it? How is this going to better prepare me for the future? And if it's not a failure and I made a decision and I got what I wanted, well, great. That was a winning decision. I schedule in important personal moments onto my calendar and I make them non-negotiable. That helps me avoid regret. Tonight I have a date night, double date night with Kate and 2 friends. I have a event coming up this weekend with friends. Like I put these things on the calendar so I can't even think about, do I want to go? Do I not want to go? If I know it's important and there's any ounce of me questioning it, I just put it on the calendar and I commit to it. I always prioritize what my mind and body needs to at the end of the day. And I just do what is in the best interest of me because I need to. And if I don't, nobody else is going to do that for me. So the result is I feel content to be where I am right here, right now, always. I'm telling you that right now. There's no place I'd rather be than recording this podcast with all of you. It feels fantastic. I feel at peace because I am the designer of my life. That's really powerful. I'm not regretting any past decisions or moments getting up to this moment. I am so happy to be right here, right now, because I know I'm the designer of my life. And I opened up this podcast stating that if all these past experiences didn't happen to me, I would not be able to teach all of you. And I love to be a teacher and a leader to help those go through things that I have been through before. And lastly, I accept that I can't do everything, right? So that is a huge unlock because I'm able to delegate things and not regret. Bobby, why did you try doing all of this at once? Why did you try juggling 15 things when you probably should have only juggled 3 things? That's been really, really, really helpful. Challenge for listeners. If you made it this far, I want you to face these emotions head on. Maybe some of them didn't resonate. Maybe some of them really kind of hit a little point and you kind of got you feeling a little woozy because you knew, damn, this is really speaking to me. I want you to write down all these emotions either on a notepad or in your notes app, and I'll say them out loud right now for you. Stress, anxiety, fatigue, guilty, isolation, frustration, burnout, and regret. So now that you have these all written out, I want you to think, what is causing me to feel this in my emotion? Excuse me. What is causing me in my life right now to feel this emotion? And make a list of all those things. From there, I then want you to ask yourself, what boundaries could I create so that I no longer feel this way? This process may be uncomfortable. There are going to be things that come up within you that you are scared to write down. And I'm challenging you right now to write it down and address it, because it is through this process, you're going to feel the opposite of everything that I discussed today. It's going to allow you to feel peace. It's going to allow you to feel freedom. It's going to allow you to feel fulfillment. It's going to allow you to feel happiness. And I guarantee you, you're striving for all four of those emotions as the designer of your life. As I mentioned a few times in this podcast, the Life Designer Club community and course is in the works. If that's something that you may be of interest, which I'm betting is the case given you're listening to this episode, head to bobbyhobert.com to join the waitlist. It is likely going to be launching at the end of April. And if you're on the waitlist, you will be receiving an offer that the public will not be receiving. I won't say anything else, but trust me, if it's something you think you may be interested in, join. It's going to be a course. It's also going to be community, and it will be really, really beneficial for all of you. You can also head to bobbyhobert.com to learn more about my newsletter, my one-on-one coaching program, and other digital courses that I already have out there. The best way to support this podcast, screenshot this episode on whatever platform you're listening in on, post it to your IG story, tag me at Bob A. That's B-O, 3 B's, 4 A's, and Y. Share this podcast in your IG story. Let me know what was the biggest takeaway. How did this episode change your perspective? Share it out. It is so appreciated, and I would love to hear what y'all thought of this episode. If you're a Spotify listener, we have 4.9 ratings out of 137 reviews, so please drop a review there. And if you're an iTunes listener, we're at 4.8 out of 95 reviews, so please, please, please leave a review there. Thank you for tuning in. It's the Bearded Man Podcast.